Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Mark. If you are a employee, a manager, a organization leader, a business owner, a father, a mother, or even a grandpa like I am, and you're looking for some specific ideas about how you can improve, or in some cases, if you are a business owner or a company, become more profitable, this channel is for you. Initially, I was going to dedicate this channel and only speak about leadership traits. Over the years, I've documented quite a few leadership traits that I've learned from watching other great leaders, through my experiences as being an employee, being a manager, etc. But instead of just talking about those leadership traits, and after thinking about this a bit, I decided to make this topic on this channel quite a bit broader than that, and talk about what great businesses, what great companies, what great teams do, what great employees do, and certainly what great managers and great leaders do. So the acronym for this channel, I'm calling it WGXD. What do great, and the X stands for the things I just mentioned, what do they do that makes them successful? So I want to keep this very simple and ultimately provide value to you as an individual or a team leader, as a company, as a business. And I'm convinced that some of the things that, or most of the things, in fact, that I'm going to talk to you about, if you do these things, I feel that you could very well be a lot more successful than what you are. And that's what I want to provide. I want to provide you some very pragmatic, practical steps of not only what to do, but how to do it. And I'll talk about that more in future episodes. Let me first take just a minute to give you a little bit about my background. So I retired from the Air Force back in 1995. And since then, I've been in the telecom arena for the most part as a telecom supplier. We're a fairly large telecom supplier. We sell to the likes of AT&T, Verizon in the US, companies overseas, such as Orange, Vodafone, and companies over in Asia and elsewhere as well. We sell all around the world. We're one of the biggest telecom suppliers in the industry. So I joined the Air Force back in 1977, straight out of high school. In fact, I had my 18th birthday in basic training at an Air Force base down in Texas. I joined as an inventory management specialist, and after a few years, I cross-trained into avionics. And I did that for the most of my career. While I was in the Air Force, and I'm sure it's like this with other military services as well, they send you to a lot of professional leadership type of training. In the Air Force, they called that PME, Professional Military Education. After I got a certain rank, they sent me to a 2-week course. This is 8-9 hours a day on leadership and management. Moved up the ranks a little bit, and they sent me to a 4-week course, also on the same topic. Then eventually, once I became, I think it was an E7, they sent me to a course called Senior NCO Academy. I learned a lot through that training. And I also obtained an undergraduate degree in industrial technology. And when I got stationed in Japan in 1991, I obtained a master's degree while I was in the Air Force in management. But I learned a lot while I was in the military just from watching other great leaders. I had a lot of great leaders that I served with and served under, which really taught me a lot. When I was transferred to Yokota Air Base in Japan, the Air Force was just kicking off a program called Quality Air Force, QAF. Very similar to the TQM program that many companies have used and implemented. When I got to my organization, I went to my commander's office and I asked him, "Do you have a quality advisor?" And he said, "No, I don't. They were just kicking off this program, so the timing was perfect." He said most of the time, every organization had a quality advisor, and as they were kicking this off, and he said, most of the time this is dedicated to officers and you're enlisted. But he offered me the job, and I'm forever grateful. I probably won't be in the position I'm in today if he didn't take me up on that offer. And I learned a lot from him and through others around me. But in that role, I served that role for the better of the 4 years I was in Japan and before I retired, which, like I said, I retired in 1995 to the current role that I have. So let me first talk about what successful companies or a successful business does that makes them successful. I've always believed that to be successful in a business or a company, or even a company like I'm in, you have to have two things. You have to have a high quality product that doesn't break, and you have to have and provide world-class service. If you don't have one of those two things, ultimately you're not going to be successful. So to be successful, let's talk about a restaurant example. Years ago, probably 20 years or so ago, we don't have the rating system that's available online that we have today. Like today, if my wife, for example, and I want to go to a seafood restaurant and we're in an area that we're not familiar with, I'll go on the phone and I'll say, Google, give me the best seafood restaurants in this area. And a bunch of seafood restaurants may come up and they'll be rated, right, on a scale of 1 to 5. And if you look at that, if I were to look at that and I saw a restaurant that's, say, 4.5, another one at 4.3, another one at 3.8, I'd probably be a lot more apt to dive in further with the one with the higher rating. Up until 20 years or so ago, that rating system was not available. We didn't have that online like we do today. The one thing I've always said, if you want to look at how successful a restaurant is, you look at how many cars you have in a parking lot. A lot of times I use the Chick-fil-A example. If you're in the U.S., and I don't know if Chick-fil-A is outside of the U.S. or not, but here in the U.S., they're a fast food restaurant, restaurant, and they sell mainly chicken sandwiches and whatnot. They don't have a lot of variety, but they're very successful. And no matter where I go, if you look at a Chick-fil-A restaurant, and I'd be interested to hear some comments from y'all. If you go to any Chick-fil-A restaurant anywhere, it seems like they're always busy. The parking lot's always full. They're always busy inside the restaurant. And you look at, why is that? Why are they so much busier than a restaurant just across the way from them that sells, another fast food restaurant that sells chicken, hamburgers, cheeseburgers, etc.? Why is that? If you go to a Chick-fil-A restaurant, it doesn't happen, like I said, by accident. There's a couple things, and this is why I think it's the simple things or the small things that make them successful. When you place your order at a Chick-fil-A, if you've been to one, I'm sure you will attest to this. The person that is taking the order, when you're done with the order, they'll all say, "My pleasure." When you go to the table or leave the table, there's somebody that's always out there cleaning the tables right after you leave. So the tables are clean for the next person that comes in. And if your drink is low, a lot of times they'll walk around and they'll ask you if you want a refill for your drink. In my case, it's sweet tea. I live in the South. How many fast food restaurants do that? And I've always believed it's the small things that a restaurant like that does that maybe others don't, that sets them apart and makes them successful. So in that example, or any example, what steps or what provisions does a company have to make them successful? It all starts with leaders at the top of the company or the top of a business. They have to set the tone. They have to create a culture of excellence throughout the company and cascade that down throughout all the employees within the company. But it has to start at the very top. Like I said earlier, it's the little things that a company does in a lot of cases, using a restaurant example, that sets them apart. In the case of Chick-fil-A, I looked online, okay, what is it that is their vision statement? There's a lot. I'm not going to go into details about that, but they talk about and they emphasize being in the people business rather than being in the chicken business. If you look online, you may see that. But the people at the top have to have a vision, they have to have a mission, and they have to have some core values that they live by, and they cascade those down to all the businesses, the sites, the companies, employees throughout their company. So how is this done? First, the leaders must define and document these. And I'm going to talk and have probably a dedicated episode just talking about how do you create a mission statement, how do you create a vision, how do you create some core values, and how do you instill that in all the people that work in your organization. In my case, we have a fairly small quality team. We have a set of core values just for our team that we've had in place now for quite some time, and we live and breathe that every day. We try to instill that in whatever we may do in our organization. We live and breathe by those core values and what our mission is or our vision is for our little team. And you could do the same thing if you have a small team. You could do the same thing. Create, at a minimum, I would say, create a set of core values that you believe is important for the role that you have in your organization. Let me give you a sports analogy as well. So most of you are probably familiar with Michael Jordan. He came into the NBA quite a while back, and in my opinion, he's probably the best basketball player that ever lived. When he came into the NBA, he was not very successful as a team. He was certainly a great player, but he never won championships. I'm not sure how many years it took him to win his first of 6 championships, but it took him a while. And they always ran into this roadblock called the Detroit Pistons. The Detroit Pistons were kind of the team that everybody strived to beat back in that day before the Chicago Bulls that Michael Jordan was on won all the championships that they did. But I watched a documentary on Michael Jordan, and the documentary talked about how the players of the Detroit Pistons really focused in on him, and they bullied him a little bit. They had some players on there that, I remember one player in particular, his name was Bill Laimbeer. But they bullied him. If Michael Jordan came into the lane, they did not allow him to get a very open shot. They bullied him, and they prevented him from really taking it to the rim. He wasn't that big at the time or very strong at the time like he ultimately was. So what did Michael Jordan do? He got stronger. In the offseason, he realized that, and he got stronger as a player. And eventually, they overcome that hurdle. They beat the Detroit Pistons, and ultimately, he won 6 championships through the course of his career. So that goes back to what I talked about earlier. Success does not happen by accident. For Michael Jordan to be successful, he had to work at it in the offseason. If he wanted to win the big game, the championship, he realized that he had to get stronger as a player, and he did that. And look what he did as a player. Ultimately, he won those 6 championships. So I want to thank you all for watching. I'm going to try to do as many of these videos as I can. And again, I want to try to be very specific in what I talk about. I want to talk about not only what to do, but how to do that. I'll talk about the various traits that I have documented over the years, but probably more importantly, how you can implement those traits, how I've learned to do it. For example, one of the things I'm going to talk about in one of the upcoming episodes is about employee training. How do you establish a training program for employees, and how do you get employees to buy in on that? I'll give you some examples that I used in the past and some of my experiences about employee training. But with that said, thank you all for watching. I will try to do an episode at least once a week or so. But if you got any questions, feedback, comments, please put them in the commentary of this channel. And again, thank you all for watching.